Huge game this weekend as United travel to Anfield to face Liverpool. Personally speaking, it's a game I most struggle to watch. Even if we're winning, you can't enjoy it until it's done. Not that we win there very often these days, having not won in getting on a decade now. Nick, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, exactly that, Steve. Never look forward to these games. I'm not sure there's a fan that does, to be honest with you. It's all about those nerves, isn't it? And you sometimes want to watch the game at Anfield through fingers, and that was the case when we were winning easily there as well, and the good old days as they were. But yeah, you look at it with dread, and you try not to show too much of that to your young family. But that's the case. I'm just glad I'm not going this weekend.
It's never an easy one to call. It feels especially difficult to call this time around, doesn't it? Because United's form obviously is very up and down. Liverpool have lost three in a row after a strong start to the season. It does feel quite high stakes, even though it's only, mid-October. I mean, from your point of view, what does it mean for both managers?
Yeah, I mean, quite different things, really. You've got Arne Slot looking at this, obviously, in the micro, losing three games in a row in all competitions, wanting to get that kind of Premier League charge back on track, and no better team to do it against than us. And Amorim, quite different meaning, really, isn't there? I see that more in the macro for Amorim, and the fact that he's not won back-to-back games. This is a chance for him to do so. It's a chance to do so against our fiercest rival, to put something on the board. This could really jettison the team and really give that push that we need. And yes, it's not going to quieten some of the doubters with a spectacular win on Sunday. There's still lots of questions to be asked about his system and his approach, and to be fair, some management principles that he's using. But a win will do him the world of good, and it'll do the fans a world of good. It'll do the team the world of good. And let's be honest, there's no better time to face Liverpool than right now. We talked about the fact that them winning last in the last minute at games during the start of the season was not necessarily the sign of a super champion. It's also a sign that they're struggling to put the jigsaw together. It's a sign that they're not as fluid and as cohesive as they'd like. And long and behold, that then came to bite them. And I mean, fair play. They've gone for this mega window. They've brought in some superb players. I think fans were talking about it as the OG of all transfer windows, weren't they? The ones I saw on social media, anyway. And that was always going to take time to put together. And I still think, sadly, they probably will put it together. But Sunday's coming much sooner than that, and now's the time to try and put something down. And yeah, it's a huge game for both managers, one that could set the course of the season for both. And long and behold, it'll probably be a draw, won't it?
Ah, well, that's how it turned out last time. It was one of the best performances that I think we've seen under Amorim. There was a lot of ferocity. It was quite tactically astute in the 2-2 at Anfield back in January. Do you see a similar spectacle? Do you think the managers, or one or both managers, might try a different approach? How do you think it will compare?
Yeah, I think that was a really good game to watch, and it's kind of seemed to me that it was coming together. Now, sadly, that didn't prove to come to fruition, but it was. Yeah, we always seem to do well at these bigger games and bigger venues. We did well at the Etihad, of course, at the Emirates. So yeah, it was good to see. Now, how will it be different this weekend? I think last season was that kind of adrenalized. We must get something, not lose, given the previous results. And we played more of a counter-attacking game, didn't we? I know we had Ahmad High, and Dallo was pushing on and had one of his better games. And we were playing like sitting deep and then countering. And I think it'll be slightly different this weekend. I think we've obviously seen a move towards a more direct approach. And that was before Le Mans, of course, but Le Mans is 33 long balls last weekend was quite instructive as to where we might be going, especially with Sesko and Mbumo that we've talked about. So I think what I'd like to see more of is, rather than this kind of sitting in a really deep block, Something more of the Sunderland game, that nice kind of mid compact block. We'll talk about the left side where he's got discussions and dilemmas over Mount and Cunha, and even Dorgu and Dalot. And if it's Mount, if indeed it is going to be Mount, what he does well is that sitting narrow off that left side, making a kind of 4-4-2 out of possession with Dorgu or Dalot dropping into left back. And that will give us that not too deep a block, not too high a press, that kind of mid block, that kind of Glasner approach, if you like. And then we can jump when Liverpool are coming into that middle third of the field and try to get those quick counters released into Sesko and Bumo. So I think that's the kind of difference, hopefully. So there won't be the big 5-2-3 with a big gaping 5-2-3 with vacant space in between the lines. And we should try to see a more direct approach into the midfield, whether that's Bruno, Casemiro, Mount, and then straight into the forward line, if not direct from the back when we've got the goal kick. So that something slightly different for us to look at. And for Liverpool, I think Slot has tried to be again that pragmatic coach, that building from the back, and then trying to get Verts involved a bit too early in the play, to be honest with you. And that's why he's struggling because he's not got the German league opposition to go out to dribble against, and he's trying to do too much on the ball. So I think what we might see from Slot, whether Verts plays or not, is a more transitional, tempo-based play on Sunday, where he'll just be asking, the Van Dijks to that the famous kind of right side, right channel ball that he plays into Salah. But even so, even if it's not that, it's into the midfield. It's a Gravenberch, it's a McAllister, and then going wide to the Gakpos and Salahs. So I think they'll be looking for a bit more. I think they'll start very fast on Sunday, and that's something for Ruben to be prepared for. And they'll want more tempo, more transitional and counter-attacking principles themselves than we've seen so far this season.
So obviously both managers have got selection dilemmas, decisions to make. How do you see that panning out?
Yeah, I mean, as briefly alluded to, and I'm sure we'll do a deeper dive on it, we've got the left side for Manchester United. We've got the likes of Dorgu and Dalot looking at that left side, Mount and Cunha in the left 10. And it's just a case of whether Amorim wants to go with the relationship or he wants to go for the man for man issue. So Dorgu is the obvious candidate to look after Salah. But you've got to say Dalot and Mount's relationship has been good in the two games they've had, Burnley and Sunderland, and there seems to be that understanding. Dalot knows when to go on the outside, when to make the interior run, and we've already spoke about Mount's off the ball work and understanding and positional aspects. So that's a really interesting one. He could just go with Cunha. Yes, we've talked about the international break and what that involves for Cunha. But he could be brave and think, let's go for it. Let's go direct approach. Him working alongside Mbeumo and Sesko. As long as he gets that press right, Cunha off the ball, he's obviously a real threat when we're in possession. And getting the ball into him over the halfway line and allowing him to do his thing and going at their disjointed back line, it could easily be the case on Sunday. So it's a toss of the coin. He may well look at that as Cunha being better from the bench later on in the game in a tight affair. So we'll just have to see. And of course, there's the Mainoo question. We talk about that every week, don't we? Um, there's the
Exactly.
Mainoo question, and for some reason that he's not fully trusted. We've talked about the ground coverage aspect and whether Amram sees him too much as that kind of 10 and creative player, which, yeah, that just sometimes can be a bit of a group think thing. I don't know why he played so many games in that final third last season. The coaching staff have obviously seen something. We know he's got the quick feet, the good finish, but he certainly isn't a natural 10 in my mind. So I would start him just as he did last year against Liverpool in this fixture. You'd play him alongside Casemiro. You'd have Bruno in the left 10. So he's got coming back in to make a three in midfield. and Mbeumo to the other side. And yeah, for all Mount's qualities, still got question marks over his fitness, how long he can last. That for me would be the approach. It would be Kobbie and Casemiro, Bruno and Mbeumo behind Sesko. But I don't think we're going to see it. And the final one is Shaw, and whether he's again capable in terms of fitness and consecutive games. The gut feeling is that he'll probably play. I don't think he's going to go Maguire and De Ligt to the right, and then Euro push to the left. I don't really see that happening. Not least because I don't think we want the centre backs to go, the wide centre backs to go as high as they have been in recent games. It's Anfield. You've got to have that level of respect, especially if you've got a Gakpo or Ekitike coming in from the left, especially if Salah decides to hit some form this weekend, which he's undoubtedly going to do. So I don't think you risk that, and I think you go Shaw and Euro behind, next to De Ligt, and you ask them to stay. Yes, they're going to jump at times, of course. That's part of Amorim's plan, if you like, the overall plan. But at Anfield, you're going to have to ask them to be very, very positionally secure. Not like the Brentford game where we're caught multiple times in behind. City's goal springs to mind. The mess on the halfway line, and there's not even Maguire in his own half. He's actually in City's half. So we're going to have to be a bit more cautious there. And then when we get the ball, let's look for the right players, and let's look for a bit more of that kind of up, back and through approach rather than just this rounding in that seems to be the principle of the coaching team, and something that causes us great frustration. Let's have a bit more central penetration and let's go for it on Sunday.
Okay. So how do you see it looking on the pitch?
So Le Mans, you'd hope, would keep his position after a really exciting debut. We spoke at length about him last time, didn't we? Right centre half, you think Euro keeps his position. De Ligt over Maguire, you'd say at this point. And to the left side, Luke Shaw, who, as we've been saying, is not had the most solid of seasons, but he seemed to be looking more like his best against Sunderland, so you expect he starts. In front, there is one of three conundrums that Ruben's got. So the likelihood is it's Casemiro in here. Obviously, he can sit in and cover the space in front of the defence. And then Bruno, our captain there, just to the left side of the double pivot. And we'll come on to what that means for potentially Mainoo. Right side, you'd think he'd stay with Ahmad because this relationship with Mbeumo is starting to blossom. At the start of the season and in pre-season, there was obviously worries about them entering the same space, having the same instincts. But you can see clearly there's been some work on that. And against Sunderland, if Mbeumo takes it inside, Ahmad was offering support here. And then if Mbeumo did receive wide, which we'd like to see a bit more of, Ahmad's making these kind of interior runs, and then you saw the time where he's come inside on a couple of occasions to shoot on goal. So this is pretty much how you'd expect on the right side, with the caveat that Dalot potentially could start right side if Dorgu is on the left. So it brings us nicely to the left side. We've got left wing back. The key decision is clearly Dorgu or Dalot. And I think the Mount or Cunha question then has an impact on who plays at left wing back. So what does he do? I think you've got to look at what shape you want out of possession. If you look at the Sunderland game and you look at Mount's form prior to his injury, what's clear to see is that he's dropping in here. So Dorgu comes there. We've got a back four. Sesko and Mbeumo make the two. And you've got a 4-4-2 out of possession in a sense. So it's something like that. And that is probably the way Amorim's going to look at it because of Mount's fantastic positional acumen, dropping in, allowing Bruno to go. He can tuck in here if he needs be, if Bruno goes wandering. And also you've got that lovely idea of balls coming into Mount and that first time pass that we saw into Sesko, or the long diagonal over to Mbeumo. So the likelihood is it's probably going to be Mount, but don't rule out Acuna. So if it's going to be Cunha, You're going to be looking at a more direct style of play with a kind of 5-2-3 out of possession, which we're more used to. So something like that. And it's often like that. It is a flat back five at times for United. And that's where these large spaces are often causing us big trouble. But I wouldn't rule out Acuna because Le Mans, as we know, is good with his feet. And we're going to be seeing this long diagonal. I'm going to take a blue counter there for the ball. We're going to see a lot of this into Sesko, dropping deep, and Bumo and Cunha are more suited to getting in behind than Mason Mount. So they're the two kind of selection dilemmas. And again, his out of possession shape will then dictate what he wants to do when we've got the ball.
Okay, so that's United's team. I think we can probably agree that United are definitely going to set up in the customary approach, a 3-4-3 with the wing backs. That's Ruben's way. How do you see Slot countering that? Because obviously, as we touched upon, Liverpool aren't in great form, lost three defeats in a row. Do you think he might take a different approach to the way Liverpool go about things just because he knows pretty certainly what United are going to do?
Yeah, I think he'll know how Ruben's going to set up. He'll see this as a game where, this is the one to get the momentum back again, to really push forward in the season. He knows that the crowd will be up for it. We know the animosity, let's face it, between both sets of fans. And this, he's got a conundrum in two or three positions, but I think this idea of I'm taking a bit more risk this time. I'm not going to be so pragmatic. Will probably come to the fore, and I think that potentially could help us. So I'll just give a couple of examples of what might be going through Slot's mind for this one. I think the benefit of last season was that he's took on Klopp's team. He's made it a bit more of a structured developmental approach from the back, uh, working the ball through the phases. There's a bit more calmness to the possession, an understanding of triggers, an understanding of not just to get the ball wide as quick as Klopp did. No, winning the ball high, keeping the ball high and wide, and then in you go. There's been a bit more. It keep coming back to that word pragmatism, a bit more understanding of when to build, when to break, when to transition. And they've kind of lost that this season due to almost single-handedly to the German Wirtz. And it's not that he's a bad player. There's been loads of discussion on social media, 120 million pound flop, etc. I mean, make no mistake, he's been a flop up to now. But obviously we know he's got that quality, and I'm pretty sure, sadly for us, that he'll come good in the season. But he is causing them an issue right now. So not only is the issue around, well, I can't place Szoboszlai and Wirtz in the kind of centre of the field, if you like, because both players like to play advanced eight or number 10. Obviously, Wirtz is a classic 10. It's causing issue in the defence because then you've got a question mark over, well, I'm certainly not going to play Frimpong and Wirtz because that's, again, when we go forward, there's going to be too many spaces in behind. So then you look at Bradley, and I have to be honest, I loved Bradley's intro last season, season before last. I have to say, looked like a quality stand-in for Trent, coming in at times and substituted in and out of games. He looks to be strong, aggressive, good in the duel, good in the air. Uh, Loves space ahead of him. He can attack the space. But I've got to say, he's not quite the player I thought he was. He's not, or certainly as yet, he's not developed into that full kind of right back that potentially the Liverpool fans or Slot thinks he is at this moment. Um, and there's mistakes in him, and we saw that in Chelsea. There was the early yellow card where he's just literally pulled Garnacho down, and then of course Slot brings him off early, and there's he thinks there's a danger that he'll lose his head. So Slot is all about temperament, and he's all about decision making on the field, in and out of possession. We saw that with his sly dig at Gakpo. I think that was the Palace game where he said Gakpo needed to think about when to transition high and when to just keep his position. And we're certainly seeing that with Bradley as well. So there's the question mark he's got on the weekend. I personally think he'll go Szoboszlai right back and not take that risk a really kind of adrenalised Bradley up against a Mount, Acuna, Sesko, and obviously Bruno likes to drift down that left side as well. And Wirtz has also caused an issue with how the team transition. So you look at last season, it was often a 4-3-3 at times. You'd have Gakpo and Salah wide and Diaz often as the false nine. And once the ball was up to those three quickly, so into the midfield, into McAllister, Gravenberch, and then wide, they'd then be quickly on to that last line. And we've not seen much of that this season. So Wirtz has caused them in this 4-2-3-1, floating either in from the left or just in the classic 10, to be looking for him too often and often too early. So Wirtz is coming back, he's dropping deep to receive the ball in his own half where you just don't want him there. And then he's taking the ball as if it's in the German league and he's trying to carry it past two or three players from those deep positions. And it's caused them no end of issues. So I really hope, for our sake, he does play on Sunday. Now, obviously, I don't want that to be a jinx. He is a solid player. I'm not saying that. And it could quite easily open us up, especially our disjointed defence at times. But I do believe if he plays Wirtz instead of a Jones or an Ekitike, then that certainly suits us rather than them at the moment. So it'd be really interesting to see what Slot does in that respect. So they'll set up in their classic 4-2-3-1 under Slot. Van Dijk, Konate I know is a bit of a injury doubt at the moment, so that could be Gomez. They'll have to wait and see on that. And then they've got two key questions in their fullback role. We've talked already extensively about the kind of Bradley and Wirtz dilemma. That's simply that, yes, he started the last three games at right back, but when they've played in Europe or they played Arsenal, they've gone with Szoboszlai in this right back area, and Bradley's either come on or been an unused sub. Likewise, they've got a question mark on Kerkez, who's fantastic, coming down this space, helping Cody, Gakpo, and, really getting into these areas here, crossing the ball well, really powerful in attacking duels. But he's not so good on the back foot, so you could easily understand if Andy Robertson's fit from the international week, him coming in here, and you could easily understand why Szoboszlai might start right back. But as we've said, this could play into our hands quite nicely because it'll probably mean Wirtz starts in the 10 behind Isak. Obviously, we've got Gakpo and Salah here. And what Wirtz tends to do is do this. So while Slot would want him to come in behind our double pivot of Bruno and Casemiro and getting into these spaces, running off Bruno's shoulder, linking with Isak, linking with Salah in this side here, it could play into our hands quite nicely because he's not hitting the form that they'd like to have seen. I think instead you might want to look at something that happened last season where Gravenberch has played really well in that anchoring six role. You've got, you could either go Szoboszlai in this right side, but you could go McAllister and then those two interchange quite nicely. And then in the left side, Slot's clearly got to be thinking about Curtis Jones. I mean, he's neat on the ball. He will receive well in the midfield. There's this triangle then that works quite nicely in terms of the rotations available. And again, you're likely to look at penetrating our two who, why we said earlier, why we'd go Kobbie Mainoo in there to ensure there's a bit more solidity. So the thing with Jones is ball in from Gravenberch and then straight into this kind of front three area. We'll take the ball here as an example. So straight over to Salah. Then you've got McAllister coming in, and you've got 1v1s there against the likes of Luke Shaw and Dorgu or Dalot, and it just gives them that bit more solidity. So the hope, again, don't want to jinx it, is that they go Wirtz and Szoboszlai, one of their best players and most creative players, is stuck at right back, and that gives them lots of things to think about. From our point of view, when we get that, you'd want to be attacking Szoboszlai on the back foot and working on his weakness. So that's why there's an idea that Cunha might impact later on in the game, getting him behind there, Sesko coming across, Bruno, and then you could even look at a Dalot substitution later on, because for all his challenges as a wing back, Dalot is good at getting beyond the final lines and causing some damage into here. So that's where Bruno and Sesko can have an impact in the penalty area.
I suppose it's also worth talking about the psychology of this fixture because it's something in itself, isn't it? Liverpool at Anfield, it's kind of mythologized, I suppose. I know the number of times that we went there with a substantially better team than them under Sir Alex, but because Sir Alex had it in his head about killing the crowd, about quietening them down, because he recognised what they could lend a Liverpool performance. Because he was so mindful of that, we often, to my mind, were a bit too cautious going there. I don't know. At some point, at some stage, I would have loved us to go there as the underdogs and just shut them up on merit. You know what I mean? Just go right front foot, boss the ball, like you say, at the Emirates, for instance, last season. Even though we lost, the opportunities were there to win that game before we lost it. I would love to see us go and just surprise them. Front foot, and but it's probably more likely, given the stakes, even this early, even mid-October, it's a high stakes game, isn't it, for both managers?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we can't go there looking nervous, looking to quieten the crowd or all that kind of thing. Like you're absolutely right. Fergie often did at Anfield and would often start so poorly and jittery. Yeah, I remember being there a few times and that being the case. So yeah, definitely. Let's look at what we did against Arsenal. We talked about the Fulham game as well, being on the front foot 10 or 15 minutes, or even a bit longer. And let's just go out there. And then the key then is sustaining it and prolonging that. And I think you're absolutely right. Let's talk about performance principle first, and not this idea of the Anfield crowd, which let's face it is a bit of a myth. Let's be honest. They soon turn on. Not so much the players, but the atmosphere soon turns when they're losing, and there's a lot of booing at the referee. Of course, it's Michael Oliver. It has to be this weekend, and we just go out there on the front foot and we try and sustain that good pressure that we usually have at beginning of games. And that would be, yeah, really nice. And as you say, Steve, it's a massive game for both managers. Who'd have thought that already in October? Slot doesn't want to be losing four in a row or three in a row in the league. Amorim, every game's massive, to be honest with you. I mean, yes, we can talk about coming back into it there, the Chelsea and Sunderland games, but it's still that thing that's hanging on his shoulder. There was 10 men again against Chelsea. Sunderland is another promoted side that we've managed to beat and get the 3 points. So if he can just break that little, we talked about jinxing things earlier. Well, let's look at this from another perspective and a positive jinx. If he can just get that off his back, and come away with a win at Anfield where it's not too implausible that happens, then it really does set the nature for the rest of the season, and pushing ourselves up the table. We have a bit more confidence about us. So yeah, although not very likely, it's certainly not implausible, and a huge game for both managers. If Liverpool fans are already saying if they lose to the worst United side in 2 decades, this will really set them back, and there's certainly a little bit of worry on their part going into this as well.
Take a draw then, yeah.
I think everyone's said that, haven't they? 0-0, 1-1. It's almost a banker, isn't it?
So I'll take your hand. I'll snap your hand off for that right now.
Just
But
don't
Nick,
lose. Don't lose.
yeah, just don't lose. Please don't lose. For the sake of the table, for the sake of being crowed at, no, thank you. But Nick, as always, pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, fingers crossed for Sunday.
Cheers, Steve.